Mitchell Group is here with us. We're delighted to have her. She is a nationally known expert in the areas of recruitment, retention, generations at work, organizational development, and training and development. She's written 3 books: The Essential Workplace Conflict Handbook, The Big Book of HR, and The Essential HR Handbook. She writes blogs for several nonprofits, and she's working on a new book, which is out or coming out soon, on stories on the dark side of the business world.
Still in the works.
All right.
Still collecting stories.
Terrific. I'll have some stories here today. So she's previously worked for growing biotech organizations. Since 2008, she's had her own practice as an author, speaker, career coach, and consultant to small and mid-sized organizations. I mentioned the books that she's authored. She's been a director of human resources at significant national and international corporations, including Marriott. And her education was from North Park University. She's been a very popular speaker with us here at 40 Plus in the past, and we're delighted to have Barbara back. Please join me in welcoming Barbara.
Actually, since that, I need to update that bio for sure, because I have 2 books that have been published since then that I'm going to raffle off later today. So today could be your lucky day if any of you have any conflict in your life, which I'm sure is nobody. One's the Essential Workplace Conflict Handbook, and this one is the latest until June when another one comes out. I've been busy. The Conflict Resolution Phrase Book. This has 2,000 plus phrases to use in conflict situations, which go personally as well as professionally. So we'll do that at the end, Ken? That's okay?
Sure.
All right. I'll leave them here so we don't forget. So, my 3 words this morning. Curious, and a lot of you said curious. I am so glad to hear that word. I just think as people, we need to be curious. We learn so much by just being aware of what's happening around you and asking good questions. So I hope that you'll ask me questions. I love it when people ask me questions I don't know the answers to. Promise you, I'll get the answers and I'll get back to you. But if you tweak my curiosity, that means that I've had a great day. So I guess curious, hopefully competent. Otherwise, Ken wouldn't have asked me to come back and talk to you today. But we'll wait and see. You can vote on that later. And I'm not going to come up with another C. Some of you were so clever to do. Oh, clever. How about there? All right, I should write that down. All right, so I want to tell you a quick story about informational interviews. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about this topic, which is why I think Ken suggested that we talk about this today. I want to tell you about one that I had. I was the person who got the call. He mentioned I worked for Marriott for many years, and I used to do a lot of panel discussions, being asked to give my expert opinion on topics. And I always say, and I'll say this to you, please keep in touch. I want to hear from you, and I mean it. Rarely do people do that. It's so sad. I would love to hear from each one of you. Maybe not all on the same day, but I do want to keep in touch. So somebody took me seriously and got in touch with me and asked if she could come meet with me. And she did all the right things, which I'm going to tell you the formula. We had a great conversation. She was returning to the workforce after having her 2nd child. She wasn't sure if she wanted to go back to what she was doing before. So she was exploring opportunities, ideas. She was curious. Several years went by. We kept in touch. She would occasionally just drop me an email. She became an executive search consultant. 3 years after our initial conversation where I helped her, she called me one day and she said, I've got the perfect next job for you. And while it didn't turn out to be the perfect job, that's a whole other story. It'll be in that book, The Dark Side. But what that job did for me It was a company going public and allowed me to make enough money in stock options to start my own business, which I've then sold 10 years later and have been able to work on my own ever since. So you see how one informational interview, which helped her, also helped me. And in return, hopefully, I've helped other people. I know she has. We are still good friends. So don't close your mind to the idea of an informational interview. And I think one of the issues is we don't know what it is. What is an informational interview? Okay, let's get the right thing done here. So let's just look at a definition. Boring way to start out, but just to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing. A couple of things. It's a meeting in which potential job seekers, maybe you, asks for advice and or information about an industry or a job. Or it can be employed professionals learning about the job seeker, providing guidance and or networking lead. But here's what it isn't. Maybe I want you to read this with me out loud. It's not a job interview. Everybody clear about that? Any of you ever done an informational interview? Tell me about it. How did it go?
It went very well. In fact, Lori sitting in front of me was exactly the field that I was looking into, meeting planning. And it was when I was downsized 15 years ago. And it was one connection to the next and asking for follow-up connections. And I did get probably about 3 or 4, and it really did help me pinpoint what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure event planning, meeting planning, but it did help focus. And then unfortunately a job came that was in the industry I'd been in, and I went with that. But I'm in a situation again where I'm curious again. It's still there, and I don't know if it's worth exploring again. So it was very...
Maybe Lori.
Oh yeah, I tapped her on the shoulder as soon as she said it. I did, because it's something I'm looking in.
Already this has been a profitable
Yeah, but I loved it. It was just so helpful, and it helped me move from one person to the next and kind of, like I said, focus and sharpen what I was looking at, what matched my skills and interests.
Good. Anybody else want to share a story? Yes, in the back.
Yeah.
Can't see your name there.
Oh, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
Yeah. So, so I first heard about information interviews here from one of the speakers. So, and then Ken suggested I talk with a speaker directly. So I just tried it out, and it's been very interesting. Not only to develop my confidence, but also just as this lady said in front of me about you. Learn more about an industry you're curious about and start narrowing down the field, and also helps narrow down what companies you should be looking at, because because there can be like hundreds or thousands of companies and you don't know where to start. This way you can narrow down the field.
Good. Those are 2 very positive experiences. And I just want to talk about confidence there for a moment. I just wanted to share a quote with you. Any of you who've ever heard me speak before, I love quotes. I just think that other people say things sometimes that's just perfect. And here's a great one from Arthur Ashe. One important key to success is self-confidence. An important key to self-confidence is preparation. I see some heads nodding here. Yeah. And I know when you're in the situation that you all are in right now, many of you are looking for a new opportunity. Your self-confidence is a little shaken. Hard to keep that up. But preparation can make a difference. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And welcome. Glad you're here. And look at you sitting in the front row. I was at a presentation once. It was for a large industry association meeting. When you walked in the back of the room, on the screen, the speaker had put, "Sexy people sit in the front." Do you know that nobody sat in the front? I did. I went immediately. But I thought, what's wrong with this? It was an HR crowd. I'm an HR person, so I can say that. We don't tend to think of ourselves in those terms, I guess. Oh dear, I forget, I'm going to be on YouTube with that statement. My HR friends will be unhappy with me. So let's move on here. Why do informational interviews? You've already talked about some of the reasons already. You can focus your career goals. Maybe you're curious about something. You can also expand your professional network, which I know is one of the reasons that you all are here today. Gain interview practice. Gain telling your story. If you'd like copies of the slides so you don't have to keep writing everything down, I'm happy to share them with you. So just let me know at the end. You get information in a more relaxed setting, hopefully, an informational interview, because you know you're not there to get a job. You're there to learn. So maybe you're a little more relaxed. You can prepare your story, get comfortable telling your story, refine your story. And then I'll just add that they're fun. I'll share another personal example here of one time I got started doing informational interviews. I can't remember if I was looking for a job or consulting or whatever, but I got so into informational interviews that I couldn't stop myself. Because I am very curious, I was learning so much, I was meeting new people, I was having fun, and all of a sudden I said to myself, wait a minute, I have to get something that brings in some income. These informational interviews are fun, and I'm learning and growing. I had probably overused them a little bit. So watch out for that. If you get into that kind of a mode where you think you're being productive because you're meeting people, you're doing things, but it's not leading you where you want to go. Unless your goal is to just meet people and learn. Yes?
Can I ask you something with opposing
Absolutely.
views that you may not like? But this is what I'm doing research on for Dr. Glover for NASA. And it's a private company that works for NASA. But they're saying now that you have to hear opposing views, which is emotional intelligence, to be able to move up into jobs now. Because jobs are changing in science every day. And do we need to hear more complicated things rather than simplistic things? I'm saying that. Is that bothering everybody?
Are you assuming that an informational interview is simplistic? Is that
Informational interview is that most of us are unemotionally intelligent. And
Oh,
now
wow.
today we have to be
Very
emotionally
good.
intelligent to be able to get jobs. Because you have to hear more complicated things with opposing views, with positives. You like it and you're thinking creatively before you go in and do very focused science. And we're all going into science even though we're liberal arts. And liberal arts, and this is the book I'm reading right now, liberal arts is going into science. They want you. They want liberal arts into science more and more and more. So you don't have to like this, but that's opposing views I just said. But you were saying be careful of that, right? In business, you have to be very, very careful.
I don't believe I said that. Did I say
Okay,
that?
I'd love to hear your views when we're over.
Sure, love to talk to you. I totally agree with you. Emotional intelligence is hugely important. I just
And it's rare.
No, I don't know. I think we're all becoming so much more aware of what it is, and we have it more than we think we have it. So I just wrote a blog about the importance of the interview process, being able, how do you tell whether somebody's emotionally intelligent in an interview? How do you show that as an applicant? So yes, we can talk about it, but no, I don't think they're mutually exclusive here.
Okay.
But please, I wrote 2 books on conflict. I can use one of my phrases. 2,000 of them. So, whether or not you think they're fun, be careful. So, who do you do informational interviews with? There's a whole long list of people. I think one of the things that it's hard to do, however, is just call somebody up cold and just say, I'd like to come talk to you. I've never found that to be really successful. There has to be some sort of a warm connection, somebody perhaps that you meet here today. And you'd say, you had a job, or looking for a job that I'm interested. Could I pick your brain a little bit? But maybe a cold call, when you're a salesperson, cold calls can work. You have to ask the right way, though, I would imagine.
It's persistence.
Persistence, good word, good word. And how do you know when that goes from persistence to your impassivity?
Yeah, right.
Until we get a no. Until you get a no. There's a good answer for you. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. So think about the people that you know. And you know a lot of people, whether you think you do or not. A lot of us think our world is pretty small, but expand it. And I have stories that just blow my mind about who people meet and how it leads them. One person leads them to another. Think about, I know Lori's heard this story from me. I have a friend who just recently had her hairdresser introduced her to someone just from having a conversation, for the women in the room. We talk to our hairstylists normally, and they know a lot about us. Right. This woman, the hairstylist, said, "Oh, you do whatever it was. I don't remember the topic. You do." And the woman said, "Yes, I do." She got a lead to a person she would never, ever, ever have been able to contact on her own because her hairstylist knew what she did. So don't overlook the people that you run into. Your dry cleaner, someone who was taking his interview suit in often, and the dry cleaner said, "What's going on? They don't normally bring this in once a year, holidays or whatever." He said, "I'm looking for a job," and the dry cleaner, who meets a lot of people, introduced him to somebody for an informational interview. Whether it leads to a job, that's a whole other part of this. But what you want to do in informational interviews is expand your knowledge, meet new people, put yourself in situations where you are perhaps going to get a lead that leads you. There's some steps in this process. So think about who you know. Think about, have you told everybody in your family? I remember once when I was looking for a job many years ago that my brother said he had someone I should talk to. Well, I totally discounted that because he's my little brother. Who would he know? Well, I was wrong. Not the first time. So open your minds, neighbors, friends of your kids at the playground, people who you may meet. I've had people say that they've gotten job leads from talking to people in line at the grocery store. So, yes, you think this is a good idea? Mm-hmm. Anybody tried it, an unusual one that you'd want to share?
I actually had an interesting experience on the metro.
Oh, another good
I was
one.
literally going to an event and 3 stops. This didn't lead to anything, but met a man who owned a big company in Boston, and he was not on the right train. So I got on the right train, and he asked me quickly what I did, and I said, "This is what I do." And he's like, "Oh, maybe I could use your services." And so we chatted, and it didn't turn into anything, but literally it was about a 5-minute conversation.
So, but being helpful. And we all do that on the metro, right? You see people who are with that bewildered look on their face. I think I saw, Fred, you had your hand up? No?
No.
No. Okay, I'm sorry. Anybody else ever have a contact that led to something? Yes?
When I used to live in Charlottesville, I did there. The Walmart has a internship, management internship, and not a lot of people know about that. At least not in Charlottesville. So I was doing the internship program, and once it was over, I walked outside and just kind of minding my business, and this guy just walks up to me, and I'm like, "Okay, if you're gonna rob me, do it now." And we were just having a conversation, and out of the blue, he said, "I'm just looking for a job, and I'm about to get married. I don't know anybody who lives here." And I said, "What is it that you want to do?" He said, "Well, I'm a businessman. I just want to," and we just again talked. And it just struck me, you know what? I took him back into Walmart, talked to the general manager. The general manager hired him on the spot to be to get into their management program.
Excellent. That's a great story. Again, being helpful. So LinkedIn can also be another way, we have a wonderful resource. But again, I think you're better off to go to your first people who know you to ask for informational interviews.
Can I ask one question on that?
Sure.
What do you think about informational interviewing in an organization that you are interested in getting a job? Not going to the interview as a job interview, right? Definitely good intentions on that, but is that kind of dangerous if it is somewhere you want to get into?
I don't think so. I think you'd have to be just careful that you do it the right way. But yeah, if you think you're a fit for that organization, you'd like to hope that they would see it also, whoever you're talking to. I think it'd be fine. Anybody else disagree with me? Mr. Emotional Intelligence? No. Okay. So, I just want to give you, before we get into the real nitty-gritty here, of I think the things that can make or break an informational interview. You've got to set a time limit. I told you the story about the woman who called me many years ago after the panel discussion. She said, I need 20 minutes of your time and I have specific questions for you. We ended up talking for probably an hour because I was interested. But you have to be very specific. These are busy people that you're talking to. If they agree to talk to you, you've got to set the time limit and stick to it. Now, if at the 20-minute mark, you say, thank you so much, this has been a great interview, I really appreciate what you've shared with me. And they say, oh, no, I've got more. Don't say, well, I said 20 minutes. So be flexible on your end. And I'll tell you, in most cases, people do want to go longer. Because, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, people love to talk about themselves. Just get them started. Nope. Not you. Well, we'll have to talk about what that is. No.
For 20 minutes.
Yeah. So, stick to the time. Make sure you do your research. When you go in there, you need to know as much about them as they know about themselves. And you can do that today. Google, LinkedIn. Make sure you know a lot about the organization and about the person. Take business cards, because you'll probably be asked. I know a lot of job seekers don't spend the money to get business cards, but I think you ought to have. And you can get them at Vistaprint for $9.95. Staples has a deal right now, 500 cards for $10. So it's worth it to have something to leave behind. Of course, you always ask for other referrals and you follow up. Those are just sort of the basic rules. But don't when you walk in the door, hand somebody your resume. Why would that be?
It's not a job.
You're not there for a job interview. Now, I recommend that you take your resume with you. Some people say don't even have it with you. But I think, why not? If they say, do you have a resume with you, by any chance? Could you leave that with me? Why not just hand it to them? Or you may want to send it to them electronically as well. But don't walk in and make that your first interaction. Practice your questions. Remember the confidence thing we talked about at the very beginning? How do you get confident? Right. You prepare. And I fully believe in this, and I don't know if there's any scientific research on this, but I think when you hear something out loud, you hear it differently. It goes to a different part of your brain. I think sometimes that I've got the perfect response. I hear it in my head, it sounds great, then I say it out loud and I go, ooh, that didn't sound right. So say it out loud. practice out loud. Get somebody to listen to you. This is important. This may be the only time you get to talk to this person, ever. So you want to make a good impression. You want to have your questions prepared. Your questions need to be questions that will lead you to what you want. And that is to know as much as possible about that organization. But you also want to make a really good impression on that person you're talking to. So that while you're talking, they're in their mental LinkedIn file, they're saying, oh, who can I introduce Ron to? And so in making that good first impression is so important. The questions need to be appropriate, asking for referrals, and don't forget to follow up and say thank you. And I'm going to share some more information about that later. Usually these are about 20 to 30 minutes. Has anybody ever asked for shorter time? I think 20 is probably as short as I would try. 30 is probably as long. You want to make sure you very much up front say, I need 20 minutes of your time, or I'd like to have 20 minutes of your time. Ask and say, I've got questions to ask you. And ask them if they'd like the questions ahead of time. It's a little scary, but some people are more confident. The introverts of the world who don't like to be asked questions on the spot. There we go, okay. Miss, I don't want to talk about myself, is also an introvert.
Yep.
A lot of people are. Which, by the way, if you haven't read the book, Quiet. Anybody ever heard of this? Yeah. Phenomenal book on introverts. It is just, you know, how long did she spend? Like 10 years researching. It's a very well researched book. She herself is a tremendous introvert. But it gives you insights. For those of us who aren't introverts, it gives great insight into why, you know, if you're in a room of people, staff meeting, for example, and the manager puts out an idea and some people jump in immediately with 17 comments and half the room sits there quiet. They're the introverts who need to process the information that they're hearing before they speak. Those of us who are extroverts just talk.
Just a little bit about this on academic research. The iGens from 1995 to 2010 are becoming highly introverted. And science now is requiring liberal arts to go into science because we're all getting introverted. Not our generation, but their generation. And they started to go into my college at American University in 2013, and they cannot be in face-to-face classes and talk. So it's coming higher and higher. So if you're in liberal arts, just know they need you in science more and more. You don't have to like it.
Great. All right, so do your research. Be as efficient as possible. Yes?
I wanted to ask something on the previous one. You said that when you go for the information interview, we should have a resume. Can you hear me? But then we shouldn't hand it. We shouldn't give it to them until
Unless they ask for it.
Okay. Now, suppose it's at the beginning of the meeting, and they ask you, "Do you have your resume?" Do you give it to them, or?
Sure. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. The reason I said don't walk in and give it to them, like you would do in a job interview, you want to wait until they ask you. So if they ask you at the beginning, fine. If they ask you in the middle, fine. If they don't ask you, don't
offer it.
Okay? It's not the resume itself. It's the idea of when you give it or when you don't give it. You don't want to give them the impression that the reason you're there is that you have lied to them, that you've misled them. What you're really there for is to get a job with them. That may be your intent, but it can't be your overt intent. Does that make sense? So have your resume, just have it in your pocket or your bag or whatever. So place and time of their choice. Sometimes it's good to offer. If you'd like to meet, could I buy you a cup of coffee? There's a co-seat in your building, or there's a Starbucks across the street from your office. Would that be better for you just to get out of the office? Some people jump at that, just for a break. Others, their time is so valuable that they say, I prefer that you come to my office. Can you do these on the phone? Yes. I don't think as successfully, but could you? And of course now we've got Zoom and Skype and other ways that you could do an informational interview with someone who isn't physically in your geographic. I don't recommend that you fly to Alaska at your own expense unless dream job, I don't know. But no, that's where Zoom, Skype, FaceTime. And that's a whole other topic. I'm sure you've covered that here, Ken. Yeah, right. So I'm going to give you just a script here. And again, I'm happy to share all of this information with you so that you don't have to write down all these words. But just to give you an idea of how you might want to start a meeting, because it isn't like when you walk into a job interview and that interviewer starts asking you questions. This is your meeting. You need to kick it off. So you would thank the person, you would tell them who recommended you, or what the connection was. Just a reminder. Remember I met you in the fish market at Wegmans last week, and you said to give you a call, and I did. What other place while you're waiting in line at the market while you're... So I want to learn more about your background, your organization. I know you've worked here for 12 years. You're letting them know that you've done your research. This profession really interests me. I'd be grateful if you'd share some information about the field and your job. I've got 5 questions, and I promise to honor the commitment we made for 20 minutes. And hopefully, you get a great. I'm looking forward to your questions. And you will. If the person's agreed to meet with you, they're going to give you the 20 minutes. Unless you've done something in the meantime to annoy them or whatever. You've been 3 hours late and just, shown up. So having an opening prepared, think about it. Remember the preparation we talked about. Know what you're going to say. Don't walk in cold and go, no, I don't want to. You'll do better if you're prepared. So questions, and I'm going to give you some more questions here, but how did you select this field? Why this organization? What current projects are you working on? What are you focusing on this week or today? How about this field? Is it growing? That's what you might learn. You're looking for a new job, which would be pretty discouraging if maybe you haven't selected the right field. And would my background fit? And see, this is where they may say, could I have a copy of your resume? Or give you a chance to talk, and I'll get to that in a second. What about, tell me about what's a day like here? You learn a lot from a question like that. What education is required? What's a typical career path? These are all very open-ended questions. And I'm not telling you these are the questions, just giving you some ideas of what you might want to ask. Are there locations that have the best job opportunities in this field? That might give you a clue that if you want to be in this field, the best jobs in this field are in Austin, Texas, or Missoula, Montana, or they would let you know that. And then, what do you look for when you hire someone? You'll learn a lot from a question like that, or from an answer like that. I've never had anybody not want to share that information, right?
I think it's a great question. You know, again,
Uh-huh.
in the right
Yeah.
part of the conversation,
Right.
but it's true.
What do you find the most satisfying about your job? And hopefully they won't dump their problems on you. Is there a demand, which you probably will know because you've done your research, but it gives them a chance to share? How about a question like, what should I be reading? What should I be studying if I want to be in this field? Again, you're showing the fact that you are curious, that you are really interested. You're not just wasting your time. And then one of my favorite questions, I ask this question when the thousands, I never thought to keep track of the thousands of people I interviewed over my career at Marriott. Question I always ask at the end of every interview, and that is there anything I haven't asked you that you would like me to know about you? I don't think many people ask that question. I wish they did, because as a job applicant, that gives you a wonderful opportunity to summarize who you are and leave them with what you want them to know about you. Your 5 top strengths, your passion for that industry, whatever it is. But if you can use this question in an informational interview and say, is there anything I haven't asked you that you think I need to know if I'm interested in this field or this kind of position? That could open up an amazing amount of information. Nobody ever says, no, I think you know it all. Now, they may shortcut this if they have a time constraint. But this is, I think, a really good question for you to add as you're doing an informational interview. You could actually just ask this question, make it a one-question interview. What do you think I need to know? And just sit back and listen. But you're better off to have your 5 or 6 questions prepared. And then, if you've asked your questions, this is what you hope happens. That they say, tell me about you. I know my cousin Bonnie told me that I needed to meet you because she thinks you're terrific, but I don't know much about your background. There's your opportunity. And be prepared for it, because this is one you do not want to blow. Maybe the only time you'll ever meet this person. And this person could be the one who leads you to your best job ever. So be prepared. This is basic job interview stuff that you need to know about yourself. And be prepared. You did it today. You went around the room and said a couple of things about yourself. You may not ask the 3 words that describes you question, which is a great icebreaker, but you will have to tell your story. What are your skills? What are your abilities? What's your experience? What are your strengths? What are your plans? And you have to do it succinctly. Another place to prepare. How many of you have your 30-second commercial memorized? Your elevator speech.
Who's ready to give theirs? Come on.
Yeah.
Right? We volunteers.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. Anybody?
Am I gonna have to pick on people? You know who I might pick on? Ron.
You guys.
Ron, tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm a project manager for information technology. I've been primarily in software development. I've been doing this for a number of years. I have led projects for Lockheed Martin for one period of 8 years where a team of us delivered over 40 projects for them. I'm interested in getting involved in the field of healthcare, the technology, and I'm looking for anyone who might know someone in that field who can connect.
Great. So we know Ron's background. Information technology.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah. We know he was successful. Lockheed Martin, people know who that is. Not that you have to have a big name in your background. You talked about a project that you did that tells me that you know what you're talking about, and you let me know what your next focus is. You want to take what you now know from IT and apply that to the healthcare world, which we all know is exploding. Great.
By the way, that's what we teach in our course, so
right.
sign up afterwards. And
Good job, Ron.
So can all of you do that? If you can't, that's your homework assignment before you go to the class or after you go to the class. You will be asked for that all the time. Networking, anytime you go to a networking event, when you walk in and you get to meet somebody and they say, hi, I'm Ron, I'm Barbara, and you then share your story. Quickly, succinctly. So if you can't do that today, now you know what you're going to be doing today. Your story and your stories, I think, how people interview successfully in today's world. You can tell me in 3 or 4, let's say I ask you a behavioral interviewing question, and I know you've had all, those of you who've been coming here, I'm sure you've had a lot of work in these areas. If I'm interviewing somebody and I say, tell me about a time when you had a difficult customer, how did you handle it? What happened? What did you learn from it? And I want you in 5, 6 sentences to tell me what happened, what you did about it, what you learned about it, without me prompting you to say, what'd you learn from that? I want you to hear what I said in the first place and give it back to me. Interviewing is not easy. Getting a job is not easy. I know you all know this right now. But preparation, you prepare, you feel as if no matter what I'm asked, I'm going to tell them how good I am at this and why I am right for this job. So, know your stories so that when the person you're doing information interviews says, well, what about you? Tell me about you. And if you've just prepared to ask them questions and you're sitting there like a deer in the headlights, pretty much over. Because they're going to want to, they want to know about you too. Otherwise, they wouldn't have taken the time to meet with you. So let's talk about some of the real nitty-gritty details of this. Of course, you want to be on time. What does be on time mean for an interview?
15 minutes early.
10, 15 minutes early? That's perfect. Don't be too early. Have you ever heard this before? As a HR person for many years, let's say the person's interview is at 10 o'clock. I'm in a staff meeting from 9 to 9:45. I know my next interview is at 10 o'clock. I get a buzz on my phone that says your applicant's here, and it's 9:30. What do? I have 2 choices. I leave my meeting, I go get you and interview you, and I'm a little annoyed because I had to leave my meeting because you showed up early, and you think you've done the right thing. And I know this sounds counterintuitive. Don't be too early is what I'm saying. 10 minutes is a good 15 minutes. Get there in enough time. You can be there an hour early, but just don't go and sign in.
Right.
And, sit in your car, go get coffee. You get there in time so that you can perhaps use the restroom, but don't get there too early. But don't be late.
I was just gonna say.
Let's just be really clear about that. So you address as if you're going on a job interview. You're prepared, you're focused, you honor the time commitment, and you ask for a business card and you leave with the business card. Leave them with a card. Now here's where the ask in sales terms becomes really important. What is the one thing you want from this? Don't tell me you want a job, because that's all the way up. What do you really want from this informational interview? You want at least one, if not more than one, other person that you might talk to. You may not get it right there in your hand. They may not have the information, but you want them to say, I'll get back to you. So be as specific as you can, always when you're asking for something. Something like, could you provide any other people I might contact to learn more about the field, the industry, this company, this particular job title? Non-threatening. Almost never do you get a no here. First of all, people want to be helpful. They really, really do. They also want to look as if they are well connected. So they want to give you somebody, but they're not going to give you somebody unless they think that you're going to do a good job in meeting or talking to that next person. So think about it. If you walk out with no other names, you've learned something. You may learn that you have not done a good job in preparing for the interview. You also may learn that you're not talking to the right people. Most likely, it is that you have not either asked, or you've not asked appropriately, or you haven't sold yourself well enough. So, I can't stress enough the be prepared piece here. And that life in general, try to be prepared for whatever it is. So I think it's a good idea to take notes during. Now this takes some practice. Because your mind has to work in a couple of directions here. But if you're taking notes, you may be able to pinpoint some of the things you want to follow up on. And follow-up is huge here. Get a card, give a card. Have your resume if asked. All right. What's the most important thing about networking in any situation? You always offer something back. Good networking is always two ways. You're asking for something, but you're offering something. Is there anything I can do for you? Odds are they're going to say probably no, but they might. In the course of the conversation, you may have shared something that has piqued their interest, and that they ask you. You know, you mentioned a place that you worked. I would love, do you have any contacts there? I'd love to meet the CEO. You don't know what it's going to be, but always ask. Same thing in networking, like today, as you all go around after this session and chat with each other. What can I do for you? How does that resonate with you? Do you do that? Oh, we got an honest person here in the audience.
It's a good reminder.
Yeah, it's a good
You know,
reminder.
I mean, it's like when you said that, I was like, well,
Yeah.
what am I gonna be able to do for them? But it's just an absolute courtesy. I mean, it's good manners.
Perfect. It is. And even if, and I know this is one of the hardest things when you're in the job transition situation, your confidence, oh, the lady that says she isn't self-confident isn't here at the moment, but your self-confidence does take a hit. Oh, shoot, she's back. Okay, we're just talking about self-confidence. Since you were open about, I was just saying that when you're in this job transition situation, your confidence does take a hit. There's no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean you have nothing to offer somebody else. You do. You have a network. You have other things you know. So realize that you do have things to offer and ask, is there anything I can do for you? Ron, is there anything I could do for you today? Don't say share your, don't say share your coffee, 'cause I need
Actually, one thing I'd like to say, that being part of a group like this can be helpful that way, because you might in the interview find out, it sounds like you're short-staffed here. They might say, yeah, we really need another accountant or something like that. You say, I just met an accountant at a 40-plus meeting. I could connect the two or something like that.
And you're a superstar of that person right then, because they really do need somebody. So yeah, perfect. All of you in this room are not looking for the same job, right? It's not like there's one job in the middle of the room and all are going for it. Which means you can refer each other. And people are grateful for those referrals for people that they know. So here's my problem with informational interviews. To be really honest here. I would bet in my lifetime, my career, I've done hundreds of them because I'm a generous person who likes to be helpful. Almost never do I hear from people again. And it really bothers me. It hasn't stopped me from doing the interviews, but it changes how I feel about that person. I ask, at the end of an informational interview, have I given you what you need? Here's a couple of contacts. If I think of anybody else, I'll let you know, and I do. And I always say, and please, let me know what happens to you. Let me know where you go. Let me know what your new job is. I really would like to keep in touch. Now, why do people not respond? They're unthoughtful. Could be. I wonder, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, a lot of times people don't respond back to you because they are actually having this conversation because they got what they wanted from you and they don't need you anymore. That's being honest.
Which goes to what you just said. And you have, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I was thinking that you may not, it's similar to what you were saying about people's confidence, and you may not be typical, and that a lot of times people say that just to say it, it's something to say and they don't mean it, and so people are like, oh, I'm not going to bother you with my journey because you don't really care, you just said that to be polite. I think
That's what I hope they think, but
Yeah.
still.
Yeah, no, I actually am going to contradict that. I think when I offer to say, can I help you, please get in touch, I'd say almost never people respond. So I think when somebody says, if I can help you, please let me know, they don't say it unless they mean it. That's been my experience, at least, but probably 9 out of 10 times people don't follow up with that.
And boy, is that a lost opportunity. So don't be one of those people. I want to hear from every single one. Not this afternoon. Yes.
I have a question. So what if there is, nothing has happened and you're like, well, I don't want to reach back out and say, it's been 6 months and I'm still doing informational interviews. So how do you do that? Or is there a length of time where it doesn't matter, after a year and a half, just reach back out and say, hey, we talked, and whatever, and here's what I'm doing now. So
okay.
I just want to get a sense.
Exactly, I would think.
Because I think some people may not reach back out because nothing has happened.
And that could
They
be,
feel
and I
like,
appreciate
well,
it.
I'm still out here.
Right. So what about if you reached out back to me
Exactly.
and said, we talked 6 months ago, you gave me a couple of leads, thank you. I followed up with all of those people. I learned a great deal. Let me tell you what I've done in that time period.
Oh,
And share something that you've done. Maybe you did a volunteer opportunity, or you took a class, something that has happened that puts you back in a positive light. I would not ask for more referrals, but you're probably going to get them if that person really meant what they said. So I don't think there's any magic time period, but don't miss the opportunity. And I don't mean that I keep track of people that I helped. That's not what I mean at all. I just mean that it would really be nice, like the story I told you at the beginning about the woman who contacted me 3 years later. That was wonderful. First of all, I knew that she had successfully, her career was going well, but then what did she do for me? Opened a door that I would never have had open to me. So they're not always those kinds of experiences, but I would like to know what happens to you. And if you get me at a time when I've got some time to think, I may be able to say, have you thought about it? You don't know. So please, I mean this. I'm going to be Ken. I'm going to make sure that he reminds you of this. Ron, when you teach this class, right? Let people know where you end up, because it could be a good networking opportunity there as well. And I think your point is well taken about it could be a little embarrassment. Get over it.
Or I feel like I'm bothering them.
Yeah,
They
right.
don't remember me. I've already said my thank you. What, is there anything to it?
So that's a really good point.
But you may be able to find a hook, right?
Yeah.
So you see something in the news, there's something that changes in that industry, maybe changes about their company, the company that they were working with. That's always the entree, right? To say, saw this, thought of you when I saw this, wanted to let you know, I appreciated our conversation, I'm still following the trends. What did you think about this? Is this consistent with your understanding of how things are changing, whatever it might be. You've got that hook to start.
That's in one of my next slides, so thank you for doing this. Oh, it's always good to have somebody lead you in the right direction. It's a great idea. Be helpful. Offer something to them. And you brought up something, I can't see your name because your arm is you.
Oh.
Pretty scarf lady. Oh, okay. Thank you. Have you done your thank you? Critical piece of this. Because you sure don't want to go back 6 months later if you haven't thanked them. So your thank you can be, it's 2018, right? I have to think there for a minute. Email. Handwritten note is always a good idea if your handwriting is legible. How many of us get nothing in the mail? So when you do get something, aren't you excited? That actually has your name on it, not occupant or unit. Yeah. So if you can write a nice handwritten thank you note, do it. Especially in this case. If somebody's given you time and has given you perhaps a lead, that is a blessing. If they they've asked you for your resume and you didn't take it with you or send it to them, they may ask you to. A lot of people will say, even if they've got a hard copy in their hand, they'll say, can you send me an electronic copy? I do, because I always know where my computer is. I sometimes don't know where paper goes. Any of you have that same problem where paper goes? Or somebody filed it, that would be another thing. And then send articles. Always a great idea to see something in the field, or maybe they get a new CEO, and now of course they know about it, but the fact that you have pointed out that you're keeping up with that organization. I think that could be very helpful and keep you in front of them. So what are the common mistakes people make when they're doing informational interviews? Being unprepared, thinking that I can just go in and wing it. Even if you've done 3 of these in a row, each one is different. You're going to have to prepare differently. Asking inappropriate questions. What would an inappropriate question be in an informational interview? Anything particular about a job, probably? Most inappropriate of all, do you have a job for me? No. Another, spending all the time talking about yourself. Remember, you're there to learn about them. Now, yes, you want them to know about you, but do it the way it needs to be done. Being ungrateful, coming in too early or too late, and asking for a job. So now tell me about the timing here, Ken. Do we have time for a little practice?
Sure.
Okay. Find a partner interested. Did I say something to offend her? No. So find a partner and do a little practice of how you might ask for an informational interview.
I'm retired.
You've got to make something up. What kind of words would you use? Do you want me to put that in
practice as well.
Put that in
What's your
the
preference?
script that I gave you?
Then I went to graduate school.
In the back, maybe.
Did you make guns for a long time?
I was.
How are you going to transition? As far as going into business, it's fine. I didn't know that.
Emotional intelligence was one. We were focused on information.
Yeah, I remember that. Were you a
I worked for a member of Congress, I worked on a committee, and then I worked for the Pentagon as a speechwriter.
You weren't a I know several, I worked for Washington as a writer, so something. They all work for me.
Oh, wow. So I will say there are
I'm still and I go, you're going
is there anything else? Oh, that's good.
But how are you going to transition?
I We're getting together when we come back from vacation.
This has been a great day.
It still feels a little awkward, but it's something just to, get that start, and that's, a little bit over hearing your voice. So,
Practice,
yes, absolutely.
preparation. Yeah. So, before we just take your questions, let me just wrap up here so we can, one of my favorite quotes, believe in yourself, have faith in your abilities. Without a humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, you cannot be successful or happy. How does that resonate with you? Humble but reasonable confidence. Yeah. This man knew what he was talking about.
One of the founders of 40 Plus, by the way.
Oh, really? So here's all my information. I also have cards for you. A new book coming out in June called The Manager's Answer Book. Questions and answers for any manager on any topic. Not really any topic. That's the commercial. So, 2 books to give away here, and then I'll be glad to take any questions. Who's got a May birthday? Okay. Anybody else?
Only one, right?
Nice.
So you get your choice of the handbook or the phrase book. You can take a look at it. And I'll be glad to sign them for you. And
How do you think that the workplace contract?
Which one has the phrases? This
the one that's called the phrase book.
This would be the one.
That was part of the clever title. I think.
Yeah, I wish authors don't pick titles. If you didn't know that, publishers pick
Oh, really?
titles.
Okay.
You get some input, but. Okay, so June birthdays. Besides me, I don't have this.
Any other June birthdays?
Besides
June.
you.
Oh, Fred.
Fred. All right. There you go, Fred. All right. So, any questions that I might answer for you at this point, and I'll pass out cards.
I have a question, Barbara. I always considered an informational interview almost like a one and done. That, I'm going to reach out to somebody that I may or may not know to get information. They may lead me to other people, but you were referring to a lot of like following up with people. I don't know that that's what I would do, and what would be the benefit. I feel like if I were giving an informational interview, I don't want to maybe talk to that person again. And it's not that they.
Not just me personally, but
Okay.
the issue for me is not that I want you to follow up and ask me again and again and again. I just want to know what happens to you.
Okay, but you were saying about reaching out and keeping in touch. I would find that intrusive personally.
That's
Well,
what
then
I was
don't do it.
thinking when
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up because
Yeah.
I was feeling not comfortable with that.
Okay. No, I personally like the fact that people keep in touch and let me know what's happening in their lives, but that's because I'm a curious, always interested person. So if you're uncomfortable with it, don't do it. What else?
Any other questions? Eric, and then Fred.
So on the getting referrals,
Uh-huh.
I mean, my approach has generally been to get them the names and contact details right there and ask if I'd use the name so I can reach out
Uh-huh.
directly and not wait for an introduction because you may never get that introduction. But similar to that, sometimes they'll say, I'll get back to you. And so if part of the goal is to get a referral, and they say they're
I'm not
gonna
ignoring you, I'm
and
just.
they say they're going to get back to you, but they don't, what is the protocol on persistence in asking for those referrals, or otherwise taking advantage of a name you might have picked up, but they haven't
If
followed
they-
through on something they said they do?
If they say, I have a couple of names for you, I don't have a link at this point, can I have your contact information, I'll get it to you. And you haven't heard from them in a week to 10 days? Get back in touch. Thank you for your time. You said you had a couple names for me.
You know, I've got that stuff done too, but they still don't, so
Then
you just give up.
I would give it one more try.
Yeah, I had a question regarding lining up the interview with people of interest. Being that a lot of the people that are in charge of actually hiring people might be, if you want to talk to, are the one, I'm asking, wouldn't it be hard to line up an interview with them being, they're so busy, they have limited time just interviewing the other people that are actually interested in hiring, a member of the 40, I don't know. But isn't it hard to get their interest for just an informational interview, or is there kind of opposite effect? Because there's no
So
pressure
you're
in
talking
hiring
about
you.
the hiring manager themselves,
Yes.
you know a job is open?
Yeah.
It's a job that you want?
Yeah.
That can be tricky because you really aren't asking for an informational interview then. You're wanting to be interviewed for the job.
Right, so you not pick them on purpose or what?
I'd have to be able to be strategic about how you did it. I think you'd have to be a little bit more upfront that you're interested in the job and you'd like it. Because if you do it as an informational interview, I think that they would see through it. And it might be a black mark against you. So if you know a job is open, you know who the hiring manager is, and you've applied through their application process, but you haven't been contacted? Is
That would be a
where-
good scenario, yeah.
Okay. Then going to that person for an informational interview, I think would be the wrong approach. The right approach is to follow up and say, I applied, I'm really interested in the job. Is there anything else that I could provide for you to make my candidacy more acceptable to you? But at that point, to ask for an informational interview, I think would blow up. I see some heads nodding. I wish there were right answers to all of these things, but that's my professional opinion. Not to say that you can't get an interview with that person, but it's not an informational interview.
Right? Last question, Brett?
Oh, hi. I overheard it, but I didn't hear a clear answer about if you send out a request for an information interview and don't get a response the first time, then how many times after that should you try?
If you're sending an email asking for an informational interview,
Yes.
I would try phone or some other way of asking.
Okay.
An email is, unless you know the person, or you're using somebody else's name. If you say, Ken at 40 Plus gave me your name, make sure they know how you know them,
Right.
because they may get a lot of informational interview requests. But I think email is tougher to get because it's easier to ignore.
Okay.
But I also don't recommend you go sit in their office until they talk to you.
Okay. So, yeah, but if you met the person before, like at a job fair, and then that's how you email them.
Right. Email them, in that case, if they said, I'd like to hear from you, then keep trying. What was your answer until they say no?
Yeah, I talk about this next week in my presentation. You might try different modalities, right? So you might send an email, you don't get a response, wait a week or two, make a phone call, don't get a response, week or two, send a handwritten note. You know what I mean? And you don't want to be, I call it pleasantly persistent, right? You don't want to be annoying, but, then I would say you could keep trying, but at some point you probably will become annoying. But maybe ask for somebody else that you could talk to. So, there's not just one person, right?
Okay.
You have to cast a wide net is really what this is about.
Okay.
That's a technique that I've used very successfully, alternating. In the last email that I always send, if everything else has failed, and this has worked amazingly well for me, in the subject line, I say, I don't mean to be a pest, but ... Pretty. I get people to respond to that. Now, I don't use that right away. That's not your first one.
But I think that's a great subject line.
You've got to mix it up a little bit. It used to be easier when people didn't have their cell phones with them all the time. You could call and leave a voicemail at night, and now you can't. Well, they may not answer it, but I agree. I alternate. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was delightful.
And please share your feedback. We've got these little evaluation forms. We take it very seriously. We love your ideas about new topics, new speakers. If you've heard someone speak at another event or location, let us know. And also, if you're interested,